And Brandon, let's move on. A big deal shaken up. It caused a stir in my last NFL mock draft because I had this guy going to the Colts, and numerous people were like, no way the Colts trade their first-round pick for Frank Clark. Well, Frank Clark was dealt, so we don't have to worry about where he is going. We know where he's going. He got traded to the Chiefs today, which the overall deal was that the Seahawks get the 29th overall pick from the Kansas City Chiefs. They will also get a second-round pick in 2020, and then the two teams are going to swap their third-round picks this year. Upon being traded to Kansas City, Frank Clark has agreed to a 5-year, $105 million deal with $63.5 million guaranteed, which eclipsed DeMarcus Lawrence and the Cowboys earlier this offseason with their record deal for a defensive player.
Record deals don't last long in the NFL.
No, they don't. Look at Russell Wilson. He came up with a fake deadline and got a record deal. But the first thing I want to ask you is, before we, because we're kind of going to look at just how this affects the draft.
Yeah.
Before we look at how it affects the draft, I want to take a look at the team that got him. With you being a Chiefs fan, what is your thought process? What does this do for the Chiefs now moving forward that they have one of their biggest needs in an edge rusher and have locked him down for 5 years?
I think they're thrilled. I mean, they just lost two of the best ones in D. Ford and Justin Houston, and it's hard to lose both of them, let alone in the same offseason. So now you get Frank Clark, who just last year, 13 sacks, 27 quarterback hits. I mean, he was a force on that Seattle defense. So he's a really good player. His stats have shown it, that's for sure. But Kansas City now, I think what they'll want to do is I think they'll want to continue to focus on the defense. You know, they're certainly set at quarterback. When you look at the offensive side, they're set there in a lot of areas. You wonder though for running back, you know, would they possibly go with something at the running back position, because I think Damian Williams is their quote unquote now starting running back, with there being no Kareem Hunt and Spencer Ware. I'm not sure if he's in the picture anymore, but the Kansas City Chiefs are a little thin at the running back position, so there could be somebody that they're looking for, but of course they don't have until the third round to go for a pick now.
Well, they have the end of the second.
Oh.
Yeah, so their first pick is going to be basically the third round. It's the 63rd overall pick, which is the first to last pick. It's the 63rd, then the Patriots, then it rolls over into the third round. So you're waiting until middle of day two, middle of that Friday, to kind of make a pick and also to go on your running back thing. According to our lads, the depth chart has Damian Williams, Carlos Hyde, and Darrell Williams. Yeah. So you got two D Williams and then a Carlos Hyde in your backfield right now. For the Chiefs, I feel like this, it's like I said to you when we walked in, of like, well, Frank Clark's your first-round draft pick. Yeah. And like you said, absolutely, good. Like, you're fine with that. Mm-hmm. The only reason why the Seahawks had to deal him is kind of two reasons why. One, they had to franchise tag him this year, didn't want to pay him the big money. They didn't draft him in the first round. That's why they didn't have the fifth-year option on him. They got him in the second when they did. Number two, Seattle didn't have a lot of draft picks this year. Before this deal went down, they had the 21st overall pick. Then I believe they didn't have a pick at all in the second round. Their next pick was in the third round, which originally was the 85th overall pick. Then after that, they had a fourth, so that's 3 picks. A fifth, that's 4. And then I think they only had one more after that. I think it was in the 7th, which was no, that was it. So they had like 4 or 5 picks in this year's draft. Now adding a first-round pick obviously gives them more capital in that first round, but they also get a pick next year And just the only negative is that you're moving down in that third round, but it's not a huge jump from 85 to 93 is now where the Seahawks are going to go. I'll ask you this. In your mind, what does this do to now the Seahawks strategy? Because now they have the 21st overall pick and the 29th overall pick. The one position that I know I've been mocking a lot to the Seahawks at 21 when they had won was cornerback. I was also mocking cornerback to the Chiefs at 29. So now, because you can get a cornerback in my mind at either two spots, if you are Pete Carroll, if you are the Seattle Seahawks, what's going through your mind now that you have the 21st and the 29th pick in the first round?
What's going through my mind is outstanding. We have an opportunity to get two positions. But I think when you look at the Seattle Seahawks, what did you just do? You just gave Russell Wilson a huge deal. And I apologize, but not really because I don't care, that I'm going to talk about offense again because defense is boring for the most part. I'm really thrilled that the Chiefs got Frank Clark, but boring. You look at the offensive weapons. Doug Baldwin last season, it was a lost season for him. He was hurt, barely was able to play. When he did play, he wasn't at the top level. I mean, we remember Doug Baldwin from just 2-3 years ago. Had like 13 touchdowns. I remember playing the guy in fantasy.
Yep.
He screwed me every time because he always had at least 1 to 2 touchdowns. Tyler Lockett, outstanding. Solid wide receiver for them. Their number one last year. Tyler Lockett can't be your number one wide receiver. He can't. He can't continue with a number one wide receiver label to him. He's a 2 for sure. Solid stud 2. He's not a number 1. Doug Baldwin's no longer going to be a number 1 if he can't shake an injury. David Moore, they've tried to work him into it. He could be a decent 3. After that, you've got nobody. You have got nobody. Tight end, you need help there too. So if I'm the Seattle Seahawks, I'm thinking, wow, this is outstanding. Russell Wilson is locked in. Who's he throwing it to? Who's he throwing it to? What guys are going to be available for him to help him make plays, to help him do what he does, and who ultimately have helped him to get to this big payday? So I'm looking, if I'm the Seahawks, for an offensive weapon. Obviously not at the running back position. You seem set there, especially with Chris Carson most likely being your guy. But wide receiver, tight end. What are you going to do? And I would say more wide receiver because even when Jimmy Graham was in Seattle, it didn't seem to go well. When Jimmy Graham was in New Orleans, it was perfect. Match made in heaven, him and Breeze. But it didn't go so well with the Seattle Seahawks. So I look for the Seattle Seahawks to do something offensively and something at the wide receiver position.
Now, I'm going to combat you here a little bit.
Please.
And the reason why is I don't think if I'm the Seahawks, I am not looking at wide receiver in the first round. And the reason why I say that is because I look at the wide receivers in this draft and I feel like I can get better. I say better value later on, not that like, hey, I can get a DK Metcalf in the third round, but I look at it and I go, maybe I can get a guy who develops better in the third round than I can with what's available to me at the first round. And the reason why I say that is, so I've been looking at this article that Dave sent me. Roto World, who they dive into the analytics of everything, they ranked analytically the every position, and they gave like, okay, this is where we would have them draft compared to where others would have them drafted. Oh no, did I pull up the wrong article? I think I pulled up the wrong article. Give me 2 seconds to pull up the right article. It would be like, hey, Ricky, you should probably have this already pulled up ahead of time. Let's see.
Who cares?
There we go. I was looking at it earlier. So let's see. No, this is not what I wanted either. Why is it not giving me what I want here? But basically what it is they they have guys higher in the draft later on, and they have them ranked higher. Like one of them being the kid out of Stanford, JJ Arcega-Whiteside. You also got like Miles Boykin, who could be a third-round pick this year. To where if I'm the Seahawks, the two positions I'm looking at in the first round are I'm looking for a corner and I'm looking for a defensive tackle. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for somebody that can add depth with Jaron Reed, and I'm giving me somebody that is going to help me out in that backfield because my defense is depleted. Like Russell Wilson is a guy kind of like a Tom Brady in my sense, kind of like a Peyton Manning, kind of like all the great quarterbacks. They will make wide receivers good. Yes, are the wide receivers they have amazing? No. Yes, Doug Baldwin is your best wide receiver right now, but Russell Wilson's going to make them better. That's why I feel I could get an Arcega-Whiteside, a Miles Boykin, a Hakeem Butler later in this draft, and because of that, I can tackle defense early on in the first. And that, to me, is the big decision that the Seahawks are going to have to weigh on themselves, because if you look at it, like I was saying before, if I pull up on NFL.com, I'm going to pull up their profile really quick. These are the picks they have in the entire weekend. You ready for it, Brandon? They have 2 picks on Thursday. They have 1 pick on Friday, which is a third rounder, which is the 92nd now because they moved back in that flip with KC. And then they have a 4th and a 5th on Saturday. That's all you got. 2 firsts, a 3rd, a 4th, and a 5th. Not a lot of ammo. You don't got a lot of... Right now, it's like if the Raiders have an assault rifle with all the picks that they've got, the Seahawks have a 5-round pistol. They've only got 5 rounds to work, and they got to make them count. They got to make sure they're hitting with accuracy and they're not wasting picks. So, to me, if they took a wide receiver in the first, would it be a bad pick? No. I just think the value might be greater in the... Well, the value might be greater later, and also a pick I would look at with that 29th pick, as I do weird things with my hands here, is Jeffrey Simmons, the defensive tackle out of Mississippi State, because, like I've said earlier, you're going to miss a year with him, and you can get a 5th-year option on him, what you didn't do with Frank Clark.
You know, I think that with the Seattle Seahawks, you still look at their defense, and you definitely look at their secondary, and I think certainly could use some help. Bobby Wagner is a guy who's kind of locked in, at the linebacker position, and KJ Wright, a solid one there, kind of in the middle. But when you get to the secondary, it doesn't have the same names and kind of stud names as the middle of that defense does. And I agree with you in the sense of you want to be able to bring in some more guys, be able to get that defense again, because that was the Legion of Boom defense, right? And that's Seattle's way. That's how they won so many of their games, was on their defense. I understand that, but I think that there also comes a time, too, where you need to put some more into a side of the football that has been, I don't want to say it's been neglected, but it's just been something that's been kind of set for the last couple of years. It's time. I think when you look at this, it's time for a change on both sides. They need some fresh blood on both sides for the Seahawks, offensively and defensively. I will still go back to Russell Wilson. Can't do it all on his own. We've seen that, and I know a lot of people continue to say one of these days, he's not going to be able to depend on his legs to help him. He's going to have to be throwing the football more. And he needs to be able to have really quality guys to be able to throw it to. And again, I realize that, first round, you don't necessarily need to take them right away. But and there are other wide receivers. I think that Tom Brady, 7th round guy, best quarterback all time. But Seattle should really be thinking that.
And I found the answer. Although it wasn't coming up with what I wanted, I found the answers I was looking for. So out of this Roto World thing, and this is what I find the most interesting with this Roto World article, which I will link down below. Just listen to this for a second or try to wrap your head around it because it's a lot for me to wrap around because I'm not an analytical guy. But here's the wide receiver rankings for Roto World based on the analytics. So the number 1 wide receiver in their mind is N'Keal Harry out of Arizona State. He is, in real life, ranked 5th overall amongst the wide receivers. You've got Hakeem Butler is number 2. He's a 3rd rounder. So N'Keal Harry's number 1. He's a 2nd rounder. Hakeem Butler, number 2. Then the 3rd one is Andy Isabella. He's about a 3rd rounder later kind of guy, maybe a 4th, 5th round guy in many mocks. Number 4 is A.J. Brown, whom some people have in the 1st round. Number 5 is DK Metcalf, who many people have in the top 10. And then number 6 is Marquise Brown, who many people have in the 1st round. So, just with that alone, N'Keal Harry, I don't think they'll have the chance to get because they don't have a 2nd rounder. But, for example, Hakeem Butler, Andy Isabella. The other one, I thought there was one more that I said. Maybe I didn't. But those guys, you could maybe have the chance to get those later on. But you just got to, the thing with the Seahawks is no matter who you go with, you got to hit with your picks because you only got 5 of them. The last thing I want to ask you is kind of branch this out to the entire kind of bottom section of this draft because you had the Seahawks at 21 that could go cornerback. They could go wide receiver. Baltimore's also a team that could go wide receiver. You've got Oakland's a team that can go wide receiver. You've got teams like Indy and LA that could also be going cornerback. There's a lot of similarities with these picks. Now kind of stepping away from Seattle, do you think this trade shakes up the other teams and maybe what they're thinking because Seattle now has 2 picks instead of that 1 at 21?
I think it's always going to, whenever there's a trade that happens, it's going to change things up a little bit for teams. You're going to have to start thinking, okay, now that they have 2 opportunities, here's what they probably could do. Here's, another avenue that they could go. And then those other teams start shifting their method. Okay, well, most likely this guy's going to probably come off the board now instead of at this position, instead of this position. I mean, I don't want to be real specific because honestly, I can't be. I don't really know. But it's of course going to change it. Even if it's slight, it's going to change it. And it certainly could then change moving into the 2nd round and everything like that. I don't want to say it's always dramatic, but it does change things or alter things slightly.
One thing that just popped into my head, because for me, the cornerbacks are going to be the thing that kind of gets shooken up here at the bottom now that Seattle's got 2 picks to work with. They don't have to take that cornerback at 21 if they don't want to. They can wait till 29. The thing I want to ask you before we talk about the very last thing I want to talk about to end the whole podcast, if you're Seattle, you've only got 5 picks this draft now. Does the thought even come to your mind if there's a guy you like earlier in the draft about taking 21 and 29 and moving up? Or do you say no because we only have 5 picks, I'm just going to stay where I'm at and try to hit on these 5 picks that I've got?
I mean, you could always try and see what's out there, see who bites. Nothing wrong. I believe there's nothing wrong on kicking the tires on something like that. Why not? Why not see what you might be able to do? Because if you don't, you'll never know. If you do, there may be somebody who's willing to drop back. The Redskins, because they're looking to go back.
Well, because think about it. I think about that. Think about the Browns trade. They traded back to the 20s. All Houston had to give up was their 21 overall pick and a future first. Seattle could do the same. Now, I know giving up a future first is different, and I know Houston was doing that to get their cornerback. But let's say, for some reason, they really like Noah Fant. They really like a wide receiver. If you're Seattle, would you think about maybe trading the 21 and your first next year to try to get a Noah Fant or a Marquise Brown or even a TJ Hawkinson if he for some reason falls past the Packers?
Well, see, that's where I would kind of say no, because they don't use tight ends well. So it doesn't matter if you have a good tight end or not. They're not going to utilize them. They don't use that position much. So that's where I'd kind of stray away from that and say no need.
What about wide receiver? Would you trade up for a wide receiver?
Yeah.
For Marquise Hollywood Brown, would you trade up for him? Because I think DK Metcalf will be gone in the top 10 maybe. He might fall, though.
See, I would say yes, but at the same time, just because I think Hollywood Brown is good, you've already got him on your team.
Yeah.
You have Tyler Lockett. You need a guy who's a more big-bodied guy.
So you need
who can
a DK Metcalf.
Go up and get, or someone similar. Take A.J. Brown.
Yep.
Take A.J. Brown. I mean,
like your Alshon Jeffrey type of player.
Yeah, a guy who's got a little bit more meat to him, and basically a guy like Doug Baldwin, who's just younger. Yeah, exactly, and that's why, again, it's no disrespect at all to Marquise Brown, but they have that on their team already. They don't need another one.
Last thing I'm going to ask you, because we're talking about trades in this one. Any surprise trades you think that are going to happen either day one of the draft or throughout the entire draft? I will hit you with two of my own first.
Yeah, please.
Number one, somebody's trading for... Somebody will do what Baltimore did with Lamar Jackson. Somebody is trading with either New England or L.A. at 31 or 32 to get a guy they like and get a fifth-year option on him. Is it a Will Grier? Is it a quarterback? Maybe. But I could really see a team that needs a defensive tackle trading up to get Jeffrey Simmons to get that fifth-year option on him. So I'm going to say, one, a team trades up with either 31 or 32 to get that fifth-year option on a player. Number two, and this is one I'm less leaning on, but I'm going to say it anyways, the New Orleans Saints are going to trade up for Will Grier in the second round. The reason why I say that is they sit at 62. I don't know if Will Grier will fall that far with the other trades that may happen. I feel like the Saints could be a team. They have Drew Brees under contract for one more year. They're probably going to sign him for 1 year until he's ready to hang it up. Teddy Bridgewater is only signed for 1 more year, so you're not really handcuffing yourself to Teddy Bridge over troubled waters. I think Will Grier is a guy that many people overlook, especially early on, because we see a rush of the top 4 quarterbacks in day one. And I think the Saints look at it, hey, we tried to get Patrick Mahomes, we couldn't do it. We're going to trade up for Will Grier. He'll sit behind Drew Brees, work with Teddy Bridgewater, and he'll be the future of the New Orleans Saints.
Do we see the New England Patriots trading up to get someone like a Daniel Jones?
Not for Daniel Jones. If I see the Patriots trading up, it's for a tight end in the first round. That's what I see. I kind of feel
so.
Like,
when do they go for the next quarterback? When do they go for their quarterback of the future?
To me,
Tom Brady, as much as he continues to win, and I know he's obviously just coming off a Super Bowl victory this past year. When's it come to an end? Because one day it does.
I don't think they will go for a Daniel Jones. The guy that I really, and this is a guy I also said I could see the Eagles taking if they go to draft a quarterback. Let me give you a round here because I want to see where he's being projected to. Maybe 4th round, Jarrett Stidham. That's what I could see. The Patriots taking older quarterback. Tom Brady was also an older quarterback. He was not the young, hey, 1 year. Like Dwayne Haskins, only got 1 year as a starter and then I'm gone. No, Jarrett Stidham has been in college. He played actually at Baylor and then at Auburn. He's a guy that I could see being a draft pick of the Patriots later on. I don't think they use an early tight end or an early quarterback. They'll do that later. If they are trading up in the draft, it's for a Noah Fant. It's for a TJ Hawkinson. It's for that kind of a player. But I don't even know if they trade up because, to be honest, the Patriot way is not to trade up. The Patriot way is to trade back. So, I mean, Bill Belichick's done something for so long. I don't know if he changes his ways and actually does trade up. What do you think? Do you think that we could see the Patriots moving up?
I think one of these days we have to see. The New England Patriots are almost never going to be. Well, they're almost never going to be in the position where they can get their next quarterback because it doesn't seem to be like good quarterbacks come out in free agency most of the time.
They had their next quarterback. Robert Kraft just made Bill trade him.
I understand that, but the New England Patriots are never going to be in the top 10. We're not going to see them there. Not because
until after Brady leaves.
Not because they were bad. I guess they're gonna have to find the next one eventually. They have to.
Yeah.
They're not gonna be able to sustain it forever.
Here's one last one I want to throw out to you because I'm thinking I'm leaning towards this, but I just want to throw it your way. Percentage of 100% being you're damn sure it's going to happen, 0% not a chance it happens, although there's always a chance. The Bengals trade up from 11 into the top 10 to grab a quarterback.
Percentage?
I think they could.
Percentage,
for Drew Lock.
50%. I think 50% chance that they trade up to go and try and get a QB. I think 50% because they're not.
Andy Dalton's got one more year.
They're not happy with Andy Dalton. He hasn't brought them victories. He hasn't brought them playoff berths. It's not. They are not pleased with Andy Dalton. He is. I said that very weird. Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton. It's not going to continue like this forever. With Cincinnati, and they finally made commitment and said, you know what, Marvin Lewis, we're finally going to get rid of you this year. We're actually doing it.
Yeah, and they did.
And they did.
They brought in Zach Taylor,
and they're bringing in some new blood there. They need to bring in some new blood at quarterback. I think there's at least a 50% chance they trade up to get one.
What I'm thinking, and you can see my full mock draft for how it went down. I won't say what they give up because I say it in the mock draft video that's on our YouTube channel. But the thing that I think about with the Bengals is, so I think the Redskins are going to move up for a quarterback. They'll move up at 3. Let's say they take Dwayne Haskins. Let's say the Raiders, for the sake of argument, take Daniel Jones. That's their surprise pick at 4. Daniel Jones. The team that I look at is don't be surprised if the Bengals make a trade with the Bucs. The Bucs have done this last year. They made a trade with an AFC team that needed a quarterback. They traded back. I still think the Bucs could trade back with the Bengals to 11 and still get a defensive guy like Devin White at pick 11 to help out Todd Bowles, who's now their defensive coordinator, or could get an edge rusher or a defensive tackle, could get some defensive player to help them at 11 while adding draft capital. And how I see it playing out is Dwayne Haskins will end up a Redskin. Daniel Jones will end up a Raider at 4. The Bengals will trade up with the Bucs to take Drew Lock. If it plays out where Dwayne Haskins goes 3, Daniel Jones goes 4, if you are the Bengals, are you making that move to trade up for Drew Lock, or are you staying put?
I'm making the move. I would be making the move.
Let's flip it this way. Last one. Because I don't make it this second way. I don't do it. I want to know your opinion, though. Dwayne Haskins goes 3. Drew Lock goes for, do you call up to take Daniel Jones? Or
Oh,
do you
God
say,
Almighty,
screw
no.
it. No.
God
I'm not
Almighty,
taking
no.
anything.
No, not at all.
So
not at all.
only if Drew Lock is there.
We'll stay with Andy Dalton for another year.
Because that's the thing. At 6, and this is back to the trading up for Drew Lock. At 6, the Giants could go with Drew Lock. So the Bengals, if they really want a quarterback, they'd have to call the Bucs and get a deal done on draft night for that to happen. I think that it's a really clear opportunity that we could see that happen in this draft. I don't know. The last thing I want to ask you, I'll ask you this. Robbie Gould. This has nothing to do with the draft now. This is Bears talk with Brandon Swanson. Last thing to end the podcast. So, news today, Robbie Gould tells the 49ers, I don't want to sign a long-term contract. I actually want to be traded. Do you honestly think in your heart of hearts the Bears try to get something done to bring Robbie Gould back? Because I saw something on Twitter, workout video from Robbie Gould, and in the background, where's the gym that he's working out? Chicago. Working out in Chicago. Coincidence? Coincidence? Maybe, but I think not. Your odds that Robbie Gould ends up back in a Bear uniform.
Very good. I think they're very good. I think 75% chance that he's coming back to Chicago. Why not? We should have never gotten rid of him in the first place. Fans were upset when we got rid of him. He had one tough year. He didn't have a Cody Parkey year. He had a tough year. Cody Parkey had a go into hiding, never come out again year.
Yeah.
So I really think that there's an opportunity and a good opportunity for the Bears to be able to get back with Robbie Gould, who has been able to make big kicks in his time in the NFL, has been able to handle pressure. Again, one bad year shouldn't define your season. But again, like I said, his was just a bad year. It wasn't season ending. It wasn't anything like that. And I feel terrible for Cody Parkey. There's guys who just don't end up getting it. And Cody Parkey, while I feel bad for him, he was paid way too much money by the Chicago Bears to be that poor when it comes down to it. I think that Robbie Gould will be in a Bears uniform this next year, and he'll be the starting kicker for Chicago.
Yeah, I immediately saw that and was like, the Bears have to get it done because Blewett is not your answer. Really, with a name like Blewett, he's not your answer.
No, I feel terrible, but no.
And of course, I wanted to ask you that with you being the Bear fan on top of the Chief fan. But this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you guys think down below in the comment section. This segment kind of running longer because I made the executive decision in my head of instead of splitting that trade one into another segment, just tacking it on the end.
Good executive decision.
Because I did not think that it was going to be that long of a segment. But let us know what you guys think about anything we talked about today. The Raiders, the Redskins, the Broncos, and then the Frank Clark deal with the Seahawks and the Chiefs. Make sure to check us out on patreon.com/most valuable podcast. That is where you are going to help support us. Make sure we can get in a new studio. Also, make sure to follow us, twitch.tv@mostvaluablepodcast.com. Dave and I will be live in these exact spots here, watching the draft, kind of talking the draft along with you guys as we live stream it on our Twitch page. And then immediately after, Dave and I will say bon voyage to the live crew. And then we will record our onside kick draft podcast for the first round as usual that night. So it's going to be a great time there. Also, make sure Apple Podcasts and iTunes give us that 5-star rating. It really means the world to us and really helps us out. I want to thank you, Brandon, for guest appearing on the TOK.
Well, thanks for letting me come on.
I hope Mark is enjoying sunny Tejas, or at this time at 8, well, 2 hours later, 8:15. I hope it's good weather out there, Mark, and can't wait to have Mark back next week. But let us know what you guys think down below. Thank you guys for watching on YouTube. Thank you guys for listening on podcast services around the world. And as always, have a good day, everybody.